Um, really pleased to have the chance to join you, and really appreciated that worship. It's a privilege to join people who are taking so seriously the defining issue of our time. As explained, I'm Paul Ennals, and I chair the North East England Climate Coalition, which is an attempt to bring together all parts of civil society to respond to the biggest issue perhaps that we will ever face together. The issue of the challenges to the climate, but also the challenges to the environment, to the challenges of the lack of biodiversity, and the challenge also of trying to ensure that as we move from an economy that's been based so much upon oil, we make it a just transition so that those people who have been legitimately earning their living in the fossil fuel industries don't lose their jobs in the way that it happened so catastrophically as we moved out of coal here in the Northeast. So what am I looking to cover today? First of all, what am I not going to do? It's not for me to set out the biblical arguments. There are other really excellent speakers that you'll have the opportunity to hear today. Nor am I going to spend too much time telling you why we are facing a climate crisis, because you wouldn't have joined us this morning if you weren't already aware of that. So I'm going to talk about why is it important for us to be acting now? What's the significance of now? Why should we be thinking to be working regionally, not just as individuals or not just as individual organisations, but collectively across the Northeast? Why do we need to focus not just on the importance of cutting carbon dioxide measures, but on becoming a greener region? The NECO, the North East England Climate Coalition, has got the brand of becoming England's greenest region. Why have we chosen that, and why do we think it's important? Why a coalition? What's the benefits and the opportunities of working collectively as a coalition? And then something about individual ideas, which I hope you'll all be able to build on, and you'll get more concrete ideas from other speakers about individual and collective church action. Why now? Well, the first thing to say is that the public mood has changed. Many of us have been concerned about environmental issues for many, many years, but I suspect all of us recognise that it's no longer a minority issue. It's no longer an issue for the environmental nerds. Suddenly it's an issue that everybody's talking about. Maybe Greta Thunberg and the young people of our country as well helped to drive that and make clear over the last couple of years that this is an issue cutting across generations, and it's one that increasingly people are concerned about. Not yet everybody is catching on, but in my view, we are now reaching the tipping point. We're reaching the point where it's not simply a minority that are concerned, but it's becoming the case that if you're not concerned and if you're not doing something about it, you've got to provide a justification for it. I think of it in saying that what constantly worries me is, in 10 years' time, how will I be able to justify what the decisions or the lack of decisions that I took in 2021 and 2022? How will I be able to describe to the next generation the reasons for the actions that I took or I didn't take? The public mood has changed, and we need to be part of that. Second, why action now? COP26, the big international conference taking place in November, internationally held in Glasgow. A lot of the things they will discuss won't impact directly and immediately upon us here in the Northeast, but it is the moment when the world is hopefully coming together to try and find a collective response, a way of responding to the crisis that we're all facing. It is the moment, in my view, where we as a region need to show that we're not just listening to what's being said by the international leaders around us, but where we in our communities are also taking it forward and driving forward a process of change. Why action now? Well, strangely, because of COVID-19. COVID has clearly been the defining issue of the last 18 months, but it hasn't changed the fact that climate change is a defining issue of our time and will be the defining issue of this generation. And we've learned some things from COVID. We've learned that things can change very fast. if we recognize the crisis. A lot of money can be thrown at a major issue. Policies can change, human behaviors can change, actions of every organization can be transformed in a very short time when the urgency is recognized and when we know that it is an emergency. And we do know that we're facing a climate emergency. I think also in the COVID crisis, many people have learned the importance of nature. I think it's been one of the most powerful sentiments emerging from last year, that people discovered the importance of them as individuals, and maybe for the first time for some people recognize the importance of it for them as a community as well. And the damage that we've done to nature is something I think that now people are very much looking for ways of changing. There have been some changes that have come about as a result of COVID, which might actually be helpful in relation to the climate emergency: increasing home working, doing more digital, having this kind of conference where we're meeting but still sitting in our rooms at home and not driving to get to places. All that, some of those changes I suspect will be changes for good. But other things have become a lot worse. I've been distressed that actually people haven't been returning to public transport. I can understand it, but the increase in cars, I fear, might continue unless we can do something more about it. So the final bit about why action now is we need to catch this wave of change. As we move out of COVID, as we start to reset, recalibrate how we're operating as communities and as individuals and as families, we need to try to do so in a way that recognizes this additional crisis, the climate action crisis that we're all facing. Okay. And so, sorry, why the Northeast? There's a powerful story, a historical story about the role of the Northeast in this, which I think is really important for us to kind of gather. It was the engineers of the Northeast that released the genie of coal into the earth. It wasn't the first coal mining ever done on Earth in the Northeast, but it was the first deep coal mines on Earth were in Gateshead in 1820. It was the way in which the coal industry in the Northeast developed that triggered many of the initiatives that led to the Industrial Revolution. So the first steam engines were developed in order to clear water out of the mines and then to help transport the coal from deep in the mine up to the surface. The first railways on Earth were developed in order to transport coal from the pit to the port. And the first coal-fired power stations were developed here in the Northeast by Northeast engineers. And for the 30 years after the first one was invented, every coal-fired power station anywhere on Earth was installed by Northeast engineers. At the time, coal was seen as the opportunity for the world, the opportunity of creating energy to transform the way in which the world worked. And the Northeast was at the heart of that. This, of course, was well before any of us realized the long-term damages of it. But this story, we had a pivotal role as a nation in the starting point, means that we potentially have a pivotal role as a region in transforming the change. And it's why in the discussions as we started to bring together NECO, the Northeast England Climate Coalition, it was the Durham Miners Association that was powerfully committed to saying, we were part of the past. We've been part of creating some of this problem. We can and should be part of leading us into a new and different future. And the Institute of Mining Engineers, now called the Common Room, based in Newcastle, the people that ran all the coal mines, they also are powerful members of the coalition, determined to find ways in which the initiatives of the Northeast in the past can be channeled to be part of the changes that we need in the future. And from that, we've developed this mission, which is to enable the people of the Northeast to confront the climate emergency using the hard lessons drawn from our past. And they have been hard lessons here in the Northeast. The strengths of our community life in the present, shown maybe stronger here in this group this morning than anywhere else. And the hard science that must inform our future, to guide and empower our actions, to tackle climate change, to reverse ecological collapse, and to deliver an urgent and just transition. That's what the coalition is aiming to do. And it's a very wide-ranging coalition, bringing together the local authorities in the region, the NHS in its entirety, the business sector through CBI and this Federation of Small Businesses, environmental agencies, voluntary organisations, all of them, and of course the churches, and we'll come back to that. What can we do in the Northeast? Why should we be working on a Northeast level? Because there are some things we can do better in the region, and we're working to try to persuade government to pilot some initiatives here in the region. Why the Northeast? We're the smallest region in terms of population across the country, but we're the poorest region by a country mile. The historical connections and the narrative arc that I outlined means we've got a stronger link to this story of carbon than any other region. We've got a really interesting geography bounded by the rivers in the north and the hills on the west and the sea on the east, with a remarkable range of different physical environments, some of the most perfect environments in the country, and some of the areas that have experienced some of the worst damage and pollution. You know, the damage of the coal fields and the damage that was previously done to the Durham coastline with all the coal spill there. We have experience here in this region of damage and also of repair and renewal and rejuvenation. We're also a region that's already got some nationally innovative projects, such as a new battery factory starting up in Blythe, the coal mining heat initiatives emerging out of Durham, where we're finding ways of using the water trapped in the old mines to heat the houses on the surface, and many other powerful initiatives. Why are we talking as a coalition about England's greenest region? Well, when we were consulting across the region at the beginning, as we were starting to bring the coalition together, it became clear that not everybody could really kind of get excited by the concept of simply reducing the rates of carbon dioxide. The fact that we currently have 417 parts per million of carbon dioxide, and it's likely to reach 450 over the coming decades, is quite hard to get excited about. It's a bit techie, it's a bit nerdy, that issue. It's vitally important, it's absolutely crucial, but it's hard to kind of inspire many individuals. But actually what we found was that almost everybody understands the desirability of living in a greener place. Everybody understands that it's nicer to be surrounded by green, that it's nicer not to have rubbish around you, and that it can be very small initiatives in your own area, so that the backyard and the back alley has been cleared and is greener. And those kinds of things can make a fundamental difference to your state of mind, your well-being, and make a contribution to tackling the climate crisis. And that it is harder for many people to be constantly feeling that there is a disaster coming over the horizon. That can actually be quite depressing. People could develop learned helplessness. You just feel, what can I do? There's nothing I can do because people will carry on doing what they're doing in China or the United States or whatever. And moving away from that to say there is actually something everybody can do. All of us has a role that we can play. And if we all collectively start doing the small things in our own homes, in our own backyards, in our own churches, then that produces that kind of rolling effect and makes and gets everybody involved. So we found that having a more positive outlook is much more motivating for people to become involved. It provides the opportunity also to involve those people for whom some of those techie discussions are never going to capture them. You know, in every area of life, there will be some people who will be the last to join a movement. Those are the ones that need to know that you can get progress early by taking some small steps. So becoming England's greenest region has become our slogan. What's to be gained from the coalition? I mentioned how many organisations and agencies are already members, as well as lots of individuals, lots of the statutory and voluntary bodies and the churches signing up collectively through the group that's organised this conference, but also as individual denominations and also other faiths, collectively seeing that there's a role for them to play. And working collectively, 3 areas that we think you can gain. First of all, sideways. There's always a lot you can learn from partners. Within simply the churches sector, there are churches that are doing some fabulous stuff to be reducing their emissions, greening their own environment, and sharing those good ideas of easy ways of engaging congregations, etc., is an easy win for all of us. But also, some of the things that are being done on hospital sites carry learning for the churches, and some of the things that you're doing will carry learning for local authorities and the work that they're doing. But also what I've described as downwards, by working to the way that you collectively can work makes it more likely that the congregations as a whole can understand the importance of this mission, can become involved, and can in turn influence the local authorities, the other organizations and the businesses to be doing the things that we all now know are necessary to transform our world. But also, if we work together, then we have the greater opportunity to influence government by influencing upwards to have a good message to government and other funders as to why they should be supporting us in the region. So what might the church's roles be? I'm not going to say much more about articulating the doctrinal arguments for preserving the environment. There'll be more stuff that we'll be hearing, but to underline, it isn't just doctrinal. It is really clear, and the scientific evidence is clear now, that the more people are engaging with nature, the better people's well-being. Overall, it is a good thing for people's health and well-being, not just for saving our environment and saving much of our planet. But there must be ways in which you can be reducing emissions within your churches, ways of generating your own power, ways of improving insulation, exploring heat pumps. Some of you will have really concrete ideas that you've already got. There'll be ways of encouraging biodiversity on church land, pollinator planting, growing food, finding projects within the congregation to make the best use of the limited land that many of you will have. But you also have an enormous role as influencers in encouraging parishioners to be taking their own action within their own homes, within their own communities, within their own businesses. But there is also a role for you as churches and as individuals to speak out as individuals, to make your voice be heard, and, dare I say it, to join up as individuals to NECO on our website. Easy to do. We don't even ask for money for you to join, but to pledge your name as a supporter of the coalition. So let me just set two questions for the discussions as I was asked to do. You'll decide what you want to talk about in your discussion groups, but what I would love to hear you talking about is, number one, what can my church do to reduce emissions and encourage biodiversity? And number two, what could my church do working with other churches to be more effective in doing that? Colleagues, thank you. You've got at the bottom of the slide the website for NECO. It'll take you 4 minutes to click on that, find a way of signing up, either your own church but also you as an individual to sign up in support of NECO. As I say, costs no money. We're not going to ask you for money, but it's a way of showing that you want to be part of a regional joined up approach to making our world a better world for us all to live in. Thank you very much indeed.